Hello, good evening and welcome to the Sociology Department at Longroad College. My name's Ian Osborne and I'm the course team leader here at Longroad, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about sociology at Longroad. I'm doing a bit of a double act with Alexis tonight, so I have to ask her to move the slides on. So can we move that first slide on, Alexis? Right, okay, so first of all, tell you a little bit about the department. It's quite a big department. There's 6 of us here. Alexis, Megan, Emma, Isabel, Alice and myself. So we're all, quite experienced, knowledgeable, passionate teachers of sociology, and it's a happy place to work. We enjoy each other's company, so it's a nice place to come to work. So next one. Okay, so I'll tell you a bit about the course. So the course is run by the AQA examining board, and the topics that we do in year 1 are education, families and households, and then sociological research methods. And then in year 2, we go on to look at crime and deviance, beliefs in society, and sociological theories. While we're on this slide, I'll just let you know, just to make sure that you know the entry requirements. So it's a basic 7 GCSEs at grade 4 or above, including a grade 5 in English, and a grade 5 in sociology if you've done it at GCSE. Okay, next one. Okay, so the reason why we ask for a grade 5 is related to the sort of questions that you're going to have to answer. So sociology is quite an academic discipline, and there's a variety of ways that they examine you. So if you look on, there's 3 papers and they all last 2 hours. And some questions are quite short, 4 and 6 mark questions, and they're about knowledge and understanding basically. And then you move on to 10 mark questions, which are more about going into a bit more detail, a bit more analysis. And then we do 30 mark essay questions, which you have about 45 minutes to answer. So it's quite demanding in terms of evaluation skills, so looking at the strengths and weaknesses of various arguments, what's the evidence to back them up, can you give examples to illustrate, and that sort of thing. So good standard of English is sort of a requirement. There's no coursework, which is a bit strange because sociology is a subject which is all about research, and coursework would fit it very well, but it's all 100% exam. Okay, next one. Now, a lot of you haven't studied sociology before, so the majority of people who come to study A-level sociology have never studied the subject because not a lot of schools offer it. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what sociology is all about. So very basically, it's the study of society and human behaviour. So how society influences our behaviour and how we might influence society as well. Now, next slide. It's very contemporary. So if we just look at this week's news, there's a whole load of stuff going on at the moment that we would be talking about in the classroom. So some examples on there is the Grenfell Tower inquiry that's going on at the moment. And from that, we can find out that some of the companies involved with supplying the cladding for Grenfell knew about how dangerous it was, but were keeping that quiet because they're more interested in making money and making profits rather than looking after safety and health. So that's an example of a corporate crime that we would look at in crime and deviance. We've still got Donald Trump trying to claim that the election was his, and a load of his supporters are organising to stop the stealing of the election. So there's issues to do with power, democracy that we might look at as well. Down in the bottom left hand corner, it's talking about the rising numbers of knife crime in British society. Then we're looking at critical race theory, which is a topic that we learn in the sociology of education. It's quite controversial, and the government is claiming that we need to be really careful about what we teach. It's got something to do with ideas about white privilege and that sort of thing. Food banks, people reliant on food banks. We've had the Marcus Rashford campaign to get the government to pay families for free school meals over the holidays. We've obviously got the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd in America and the Black Lives Matter movement. So these are all topics that we will discuss in sociology lessons. So it's highly contemporary and really relevant to what's going on. Next one. Okay, so what topics do we cover in detail? I'll go through the topics and I'll give you some examples from each one of them. So next one, the first one that I'm going to talk about is the sociology of education. So within the sociology of education, we would look at things like the role of the education system. So the different sociological views on it, Marxist views, feminist views, functionist views, new right arguments. And then we'd look at things like why do certain groups of students do better than others? So looking at the statistics, we know that middle class kids do better than working class ones. We know that girls tend to do better than boys. And we know that certain ethnic minority groups do better than others. So, for example, Indian children and Chinese children tend to do really well in the British system, whereas Black Caribbean boys, white working class kids, on the whole, tend to underachieve. So sociologists are interested in finding out the reasons for these differences. So whereas some might argue this is just biological, there are biological differences, sociologists say that there are social causes for these differences. So we would look at things like outside school factors. Could it be something to do with money? Working class families are more likely to suffer material deprivation, so they might live in overcrowded accommodation. They might not be able to afford good food, so that kids don't have the nutrients and the minerals and the vitamins necessary to keep healthy and to concentrate in the classrooms. You compare that to private school children who get the benefit of small class sizes, fantastic facilities, very high expectations, etc. But it might not be to do with money as much as culture. So different classes, different ethnic groups have different cultural values associated with education. So if we look at Chinese children on free school meals, they tend to do better than white middle class children. So money's not the whole thing, is it? So the values that Chinese families put on education make a big difference to how their children do at school. And then we go on to look at what goes on inside the classroom. So there are arguments from certain groups of sociologists called symbolic interactionists who see that a lot of kids are labelled, and this could happen through streaming and setting. And once you get a label, you're treated like the label. It could lead to something called a self-fulfilling prophecy. So there are a couple of examples of what we do in education. Now, on the next slide, we're going to look at families and households. So in terms of families and households, we look at things like the major changes that have occurred in the family over the last sort of 50 years or so, and what causes them. So on this slide, we got the rising levels of divorce. So today, something like 4 in 10 marriages end in divorce. So we're interested in looking at the reasons for that. So it could be to do with things like secularization, a decline in the influence of religion. It's related to changing norms and values in society. It could be something to do with feminism and the fact that women are more independent today than they used to be. So they have their own jobs and they can survive on their own. They can leave unhappy relationships or abusive ones. Different views on the family. Feminist views are very critical of the family. They'll look at the dark side of the family, things like domestic violence, which affects 1/4 of all women at some stage in their lifetime. Pretty scary statistic. We'll look at the changing nature of childhood in British society. Is it toxic? So there's a book on there called Toxic Childhood. So children are more stressed today than they've ever been. And that could be related to the testing regime in schools and the pressures of social media, for example. So there's some of the things that we might look at in families and households. The next one is giving us an insight into crime and deviance. So we're interested here in looking at differences in offending and victimisation according to class, gender and ethnicity, for example. So we would explain why crime has grown so dramatically in the last 40 or 50 years. And I'll give you an example on the next slide. This is one example of on the next slide. Here we go. One example of a theory that tries to explain why crime has grown so rapidly, and it's from a group of sociologists called New Left Realists. So they're arguing basically that there are big structural changes in society, like the rapid decline of manufacturing industry and manual jobs, due to the combined forces of globalization on the one hand, which means that third world countries, underdeveloped countries, have now industrialized, and now those jobs have gone over there, and the factories that are left in this country are automated, so robot technology has taken over the jobs. So that means there's a lot of unemployment, structural unemployment, and the sort of jobs that were there, which were sort of secure and high paid ones, are no longer there. What we're left with is 0-hour contracts, part-time, insecure work. So at the same time this was happening, we've had a change in social policy. So we have laissez-faire economics, which means that governments from a right-wing perspective don't intervene to create jobs. They let things happen. And then there's a tax on social security benefits as well. So if you're reliant on benefits, you get poorer. Now, so as this economic marginalisation grows, it leads to family breakdowns, community breakdowns, and the family and the community was traditionally the way that crime was held in check. When they break down, it allows crime to grow. So that's just one example of something that we might look at in crime and deviance. The next slide is looking at another subject that we cover, which is called beliefs in society. And this is essentially the sociology of religion. So which groups, ethnic, gender, class, are more attracted to religion? Why have we got a growth of religious extremism and religious fundamentalism in society? What explains the growth of religious cults and religious sects? That sort of thing. The next one is looking at research methods. So like I mentioned before, sociology is a subject which is based around researching. So the big difference between a common sense understanding of the world and common sense views and sociological ones is that sociological ones are based on research evidence. They're empirical. So sociologists use a variety of different methods. They might use questionnaires, they might use interviews, they might actually join the group that they want to study and understand and become a member of that group. That's called participant observation. So in a Glasgow gang observed up there on the left-hand corner, James Patrick joined a Glasgow gang. He became a member of a Glasgow gang and lived the life of them and got an insight into their behaviours. We've got studies of prisons, of the police force, of football hooligans. So participant observation is a really good way of finding out what's really going on. Can be very dangerous as well. The next research method is, the next slide, I should say, is talking about sociological theories. So theory is embedded within sociology, and there are a variety of different theories, different perspectives, different ways of looking at society. They're all looking at the same thing, but because they're looking at it in a different way, they see different things and they emphasize different things. So when feminists look at society, they see inequalities between the genders. When Marxists look, they see inequalities between the classes. So we're going to look at Marxism, feminism, and all the different types: Marxist feminism, liberal feminism, radical feminism, and difference feminism, Marxist theory, neo-Marxist theory, and then there's theories of the right, functionalism, and the new right, and the latest developments within sociology is postmodernism, who argue that we're into a new sort of world which is chaotic and fast changing. Okay, next one. Okay, so that's enough from me for the moment. So we've got 3 Year 13 students with us, Emma, Jade and Holly, and they are going to give you a bit of an insight from a student's perspective. So we're going to first of all go over to Emma, hopefully. And Emma, you need to turn your camera on.
My camera should be on, is it not?
Oh, it's not. We can't. I don't think we can see you.
Oh no, sorry.
Can you see Emma? Oh, it's all right. It must be me. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. Emma, what do you like most about studying sociology at Longroad?
Well, I really like the families and households section because it gives you like a really good understanding of like the other family structures, like apart from your own, and then you can like apply it to real life situations and see how yourself is like represented within the course. And if Holly would like to go next.
So far, the topic that I've liked the most is probably the education topic, because as soon as you start to learn about all the theories and ideas, you can apply them to your own life, like the people that you know in sixth form and the people that you knew in secondary school as well. And moving on to Jade.
So I really like the crime and deviance section that you study in your second year. It gives you a really good insight into why different people might commit crimes and how crime can function in a society.
Great. And moving back to Emma this time, how is studying sociology going to help you with what you want to do in the future?
Well, I want to do psychology at university and then hopefully become a forensic psychologist after that. And it gives like a really good like understanding of the wider influences on like why people could like turn to crime, which is really helpful. And if Jade would like to go.
So sociology is helpful for my plans in the future because next year I'd like to go on to university to study criminology. And in sociology, you cover a wide aspects of crime and you can really apply it to the course, and it's really helpful.
Great. And the last question, which is really helpful, I think, for people that are thinking about coming to study here, what advice would you give to any prospective students of sociology and of basically studying at Longroad as well?
Well, I would say to definitely use your free periods for homework, because sometimes you might get like big gaps in your timetables, and because sometimes the travel times can be quite long, like mine range from between 40 minutes to an hour and a half. So you kind of want to get it all done before you get home and you want to relax. And because you've got friends around you there who might be taking the same subjects, it's really useful to kind of like get the help from them as well as just getting it out of the way. So if Holly would like to go.
That's Jade.
Advice that I'd give to future students is to try to stay on top of your work, even if it just means going over the notes that you made that lesson. It makes it so much easier to understand the content of the next lesson if you know that you understood the content of the last lesson, and it also means that you have a lot less to do when it comes to revising for a test.
And lastly, Jade. There we go.
I would say use your Subject Plus sessions after school on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as much as you can, because in these times you have access to your teachers and you can catch up on any work that you might understand or you might have missed because of time off school. It's a really useful way to keep on top of your work.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much. So when Jade was mentioning Subject Plus there, Subject Plus sessions are available on every Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon from about 2:40. And the way it works is that you do 3 subjects, and for each one of those subjects you get about 4.5 hours teaching. So that adds up to 13.5 hours a week. But on top of that, you've got access to Subject Plus, which are things like extra sort of support workshops. If you've fallen behind with anything, you can be helped to catch up, or just stretching you a little bit further. And as we get towards the exams, we can run lots of revision classes at that time. So if you make use of them, if you make use of your spare time, you've got a lot of free lessons. And if you get the balance right between the social aspects and the studying aspects, everything works perfectly well, and you've got enough time to cover everything. Okay, so brilliant. So if we can just finish off by looking at the next slide, which is pointing out that we also, as well as all the work in the classroom and in Subject Plus as well, we try to arrange quite a lot of extracurricular activities here in the sociology department. Now, obviously, coronavirus has curtailed some of these, but even this, in spite of that, next week, in fact, Anglia Ruskin University are organising a sort of a criminology week, a crime week, which is related to sociology. And for example, on Monday, we've got a session where we're going to look at school exclusions and county line gangs, the school to prison pipeline. So their lecturers are giving online sessions that are totally related to the stuff that we're studying in A-level sociology. On Wednesday, for example, we've got another one on domestic abuse, which covers stuff within our crime and deviance section, and also families and households. So that would be really interesting. In the past, we've had relationship with the University of Lincoln as well, so we've been on visits there. We often go to film screenings, often at the Cambridge Picture House, and in the past we've had the director or other people have a discussion afterwards. We go to a conference in London called the Offenders Conference, where they release prisoners for the day or ex-prisoners, talk about their experience of crime, what got them involved in the first place, and their experience of prison. And so we look at issues to do with the extent to which prison works. Does it rehabilitate, or does it actually make things worse? We've also been on residential visits to Liverpool and Manchester and stayed in the student accommodation up there. Gone around different parts of the city, looking at different areas such as Toxteth in Liverpool, and then gone to the People's Museum in Manchester, which is highly relevant to what we study. So there's a lot of stuff going on outside the classroom. And the next one is just a sort of generic slide which points out that at Long Road you've got such a choice of subjects. So like it says there, at Long Road you have the freedom to create your own study programme by combining applied diplomas with A-levels. You can do virtually any combination that you want because there's so much choice. Okay, and to just say a little bit about what our students go on to do. Many of them most of them in fact go on to university. Many of them study sociology at university or other social science subjects, such as criminology is a popular one, psychology is another popular one, politics as well, economics, all related to sociology. So we've had people go to the Birmingham, Sheffield, Essex, York, etc. Okay, the next one is about what you do after that. Before I talk about this slide, other than going to university, quite a lot of people go straight to work, and then quite a lot go on to apprenticeships, some of which are graduate apprenticeships. Okay, so sociology, in terms of what you can do with it for a career, is such a broad subject, and it's talking about people, so it's got a lot of relevance to a whole range of careers. So, just to give you a little bit of an idea, if we go through this list: administration, so working for the government, public agencies, leading teams of researchers, working in social work, working on public policies, the world of business generally, welfare services, education, so highly relevant to becoming a teacher. All teachers will learn the sociology of education. Journalism, highly relevant to journalism. We keep up to date with current affairs, like we said. It's very important to relate what we're learning in the classroom to what's going on out there in the real world to make it contemporary and relevant. Public relations, working for the police and the criminal justice system generally. Law is another popular topic that people go and study at university after doing sociology. Working in prisons, working as a probation officer as well. And then research. So the skills that sociology gives you in research are relevant for a whole range of careers. Working for think tanks, for example, working for charities, working in marketing. Okay, so lots of stuff that you can do with sociology. The next one is just looking at a student that was with us last year. He's left now and he's gone off to Liverpool, Alex. So he was a fantastic student in a group of other really good students. He was in a brilliant class last year, and actually I think 3 out of that class got A stars, and about 4 of them got A's. So it's really, really good class he was in. He's gone off to Liverpool to study English Lit. Okay, next one. Okay, so to just finish off, just to make you aware that there are some welcome days in June 2021. So if you apply, you'll get invited to one of these so that you get a time to spend here with us, meeting your teachers, having some taster lessons in the subjects that you've chosen. And then later on, also in June, there's some other open evenings where we've got the college open as normal, hopefully by the summer, and you can come and have a proper look around the campus. And the very last slide, I think, is just to point out that if you wish to apply, the deadline is on the 12th of January. And if you've got any questions that you want to ask at all, just phone us on that number on that slide or email us at inquiries@longroad.ac.uk. So very nice to speak to you, even if I didn't see you. Hope to meet you in real life in the future, and have a good evening and goodbye.